We were here last week, and we came here looking for the new bridge. So I drove around the corner, I came in, parked, said, where's the new bridge? And I'm standing up here and I get a call from Mike Scheibe, who does all the lawn mowing and stuff. He said, well, if you turn around, stupid, it's right behind you. There it is.
Okay.
Hey, it looks even better today than it did the other day.
There you go. And as you, we've been across the bridge before they mowed, okay? And I went home with a friend, okay, just so you know.
Oh, yeah.
Supposedly it's been mowed in the last couple of days. We've never been on it. We have no idea what's there, okay? But just, you know, it is an addition. As I was saying too, the foundation owns the land up behind us here. That's a private residence. It was here actually during the Civil War. This is a newer house. And then the land up there is all owned by the foundation.
They just got that recently, didn't they?
That's true. That is very true. And what they're doing, you and I were up here last week. You drive up this hill, and you make a left and then another left. It's going to be coming out right behind us here. They're going to clear out some trees so you can see where the artillery actually was up here. And when you get up there, as opposed to here, you can see this house here was here. It has an unfortunate history. But also the other thing you should know too, if you look over here to our right, you've got this road, and then it dips down into a little hollow and comes back up again. This driveway here was actually the old road that was here in '62. So when you came from that old road, you come right there, right up that draw there, and right out through that one. So that is part of the history, and that's part of what those signs are trying to tell you, is that this would have been the approach that they would use, not that approach over there. And the reason I was wondering about it is because if you read the history of what happened here, they talk about Huntington's Battery, which was on the hill, but it was on the other side of that road. Well, the only thing on the other side of that road now is a big gully. If you're putting artillery, now it makes sense, you know? Those artillery pieces were spread across the road to probably where that telephone pole is right now. This is the coaling. Do you folks know what a coaling is? That's wrong. But you're close, though. You're really close. The man that owned the house here actually he used to produce pig iron up on the top of the hill. And so you didn't have coal around. So what did you do? You cut the trees down and you made charcoal. So coaling would have been where they would have manufactured charcoal. And the charcoal was important because for example, if you're making pig iron up here, you need charcoal to run the kiln. You need water power, actually, to run the and everything. And you need limestone, because limestone, in conjunction with the ore, reduces the melting point of iron. And so it makes it so that iron ore was very important here, not only before and after the war, but especially during the war, because they made pig iron here and shipped it down to Richmond. They treaded our ironworks, and they made cannons and parts for trains and locomotives, and you name it, whatever you know. Part of the shell, for example, on the ships that fought, remember, down the Hampton Roads?
Roger, Merrimack.
Yes. The Confederate ship had some iron on it that came here from the Shenandoah Valley. So just so you know, you guys know this history, you don't know me. So anyways, that saltpeter was mined here as well. Very important, every grain of gunpowder, 75% of it is saltpeter. So saltpeter, iron, all those things were vital. They were made here in the Shenandoah Valley and shipped to the war effort. So it isn't just that it's a breadbasket, but there's some really other vital things that are being produced in the valley here that anyone that's on a war trail or war path needs to maintain a war effort. So Jim, up to you.
All right, we have to use our imagination here a little bit because this hillside would have been bare. All the trees would have been cut and being used for the charcoal plant. So that gives you an even better idea of what kind of view they had from up above because there was literally no trees on this hill. The other thing is that the Lewis family, right here, lived here at the time of the battle. Peter already talked about their interest in iron and what have you. Kind of the interesting thing about the family is they were Unionists who owned slaves. So he was fundamentally not in favor of secession. So a lot of the workers that these plants and places we're talking about here, they would be exempt from Confederate service because the work was considered vital for the war effort. So he would sign up many of his friends, many family members, far more than was needed to run these operations in a way to help them avoid service in the Confederate Army. So just kind of an aside that he's sitting here in the middle of what becomes a very short but vicious battle. We keep saying short. This starts about daybreak and by about 10:30 it's over. This is a very short, very strong conflict as far as the activity. So again, you've got all these guns on this whole hillside kind of layered up. You've got the 66th Ohio, one of the regiments up here is kind of protect the artillery. So that 2nd and 4th Virginia that we just talked about, that attack came over through here, over this hill, across this valley up. And as Pete mentioned, it didn't go well because this is a pretty formidable position. You've got a regiment up here protecting the batteries. It wasn't just infantry attacking batteries of artillery, but they also had field infantry. As Pete mentioned earlier, the next crew in were Taylor and his Louisiana Tigers. And yes, they were shock troops. Anytime Jackson had a tough job, he would reach back and say, send Tigers in. You're also a much larger unit. Nobody's car was hit in the operation. So you have this attack coming from over here. More men, more of an attack going on, and they get among the guns. It is a vicious fight up here. They're using spongers and everything else that they can use. The Louisianians' main idea was we have to eliminate the artillery. Well, if I eliminate the horses, they can't move them. So they were literally given orders when they got up here to target horses. And for many of them, it was just simply knife work. They didn't want to waste the gunpowder. And they said the hillside ran red with the blood of not just men, but also the horses. In the meantime, and some of you, if you're following me, you may have seen me stick my arm out and point. That was the area there by the railroad tracks that Pete was talking about, because the rest of the Union troops were down this road, the Lewis Road. And as we were coming across Jackson Way, what we were trying to point to, and Pete, I think when you led, you slowed down and indicated, that would have been the field of battle. So again, Jackson's feeding troops in piecemeal. In the meantime, Tyler has a brigade across this road from here to the river, and they're in pretty good position initially. In fact, they're coming so piecemeal that every time they could see troops, it didn't look very big. So regiments on the far right, Union right, pursued and went out to attack Jackson's Way, essentially. And they have a pretty good way of it for a little while. That obviously that slowed reinforcements up here as well. Well, then eventually Jackson has pushed enough people across the river that he can now turn them against that flank attack, and those Union troops are pushed back once again. But this is a very aggressive battle. There's no hemming and hawing. These are the Tigers, Stonewall Brigade. I mean, these are the cream of the crop for Jackson's forces against Tyler. So we mentioned Shields a time or two. Tyler is part of Shields' division. Shields is never here. Shields is back up. They're out, I believe, Conrad's store, bringing up more troops. But Tyler is in command here. So Tyler does a pretty good job, in my opinion, because again, it's defensive. He has a great position. But eventually, you're going to have enough troops being fed in by Jackson, and that balance of power starts shifting. And by the time this attack, again, they're coming here, there's attacks going across here, so they can't shift troops around either. I can't move troops from one section over here back and forth if I'm Tyler. I'm being attacked across the line. So about 10 or 10:30, these attacks are successful. They push the troops off the hill. Some of them are able to drag artillery off, some are left. In the meantime, there's pressure down along the river. That counterattack, the two regiments at the end, the 7th Indiana, and I believe there was an Ohio unit, they had pushed out to about the railroad track, maybe not quite that far, but it pushed out a significant distance. They're pushed back. Now they're going to flank what's left of this line. The Union line collapsed, and like I say, by 10:30, everything's headed back north up what we now call Virginia 340.
Can I interject something?
Please.
It's not, he's absolutely right. The Lewis house is kind of interesting.
Yeah.
There was a young man that was part of Pogue's battery. And Pogue's battery was actually out in this field out here, a little bit on the left. Jackson had pushed it out. And the young man was very sick. And when that Union counterattack came, he was so sick he just kind of ducked down and slipped into a little creek out there. And the Union troops went over him, and then they were pushed back, and he eventually came out. He had pneumonia, it turned out. So he went back to Winchester and recovered, and then became part of that. There was a division of the Confederate government where they were trying to get saltpeter. And so he became part of that detail, and his assignment was out here. He was a cousin, actually, of Mr. Lewis. And so about 6 months after he came out here, and he said there were still skeletons and bones where the pigs had routed up the bodies and everything, and the place was just still covered with bodies. And he went into his uncle's house and he was talking to them, and his uncle said, "I got to show you something." And so he went out to the summer kitchen, and he said, "I'll be damned, but an artillery shell came right in, right through the summer kitchen. See the hole? Went right out the other side and exploded." And they got talking, and his, I guess, the young man said, "Well, I was part of Pogue's battery. I think I fired that shot, actually." That's the truth, okay? So confession is good for the soul, right?
Just another.
Yeah, go ahead.
Another just anecdote. Remember Gilday back in Port Republic firing the cannon down the... He escapes and comes down through here and is picked up near the river by Union troops. So when we say he got across and escaped, he's really alone. He's lost the gun. He's got, his horse, everything. He's limping, trying to get back to Union lines, but he's picked up down along the river by Union troops. So that kind of closes the circle on him as well. Questions? Pete?
No, any questions? Yes.
I was wondering about the placement of the cannon. Were the lowest ones around where we are now, or
Farther up. They would have been up on the crest of the hill up here. And there's signage up there. You can walk up there with no trouble. The foundation used to have artillery here. You can actually see some of the, right there, some of the concrete markers where they anchored them. About 5 years ago, somebody came in one night, backed their truck up here, and hauled off the artillery. So they never put them back again. But that stuff happens here, even here,
but that was lower than they actually were.
Lower than the actual.
They were up
Yes.
at the top.
That's because you don't have to go up very far before you get on sides of the runway. And so they had to put them here, and it's the only fairly level spot that you have where you can put artillery. But there were 2 artillery pieces here.
Yeah, you have enough elevation and that's fairly flat, so.
Yes. And if you go to the top, or as close as you can to the top, you start to be able to see what kind of shot. Now, when you've got infantry coming this way, trying to get at Union infantry over here, you're firing right down the length of their lines as they go, and it doesn't take Jackson long to figure out, we got to get somebody up there and take care of these guns, because once they take care of these guns, like Jim said, everybody starts hightailing it back to Conrad's store, so modern day Elkton.
And if you do walk up there and take a look, you're going to realize they're under observation. Everything happening out in front of us is to view for the Union artillery. I mean, even a mile, 2 miles away, which with a rifle gun at this elevation you could probably reach. So they are within range almost from the time they come out of Fort Republic. Now, I'm not saying they were fired on immediately, but they were seen, and they could see how that trickle of troops are coming in. They can see that they're not forming. And that's why the units down at the other end say, there doesn't seem to be much coming across. Let's go and try and push them back across the river. The other thing, I don't know if we mentioned, if you did, I apologize. When we came out of port, last man across burned the bridge because he did not want Fremont to be able to use the bridge behind him and cross. Fremont does arrive, and we talked about that. There is a ridge just on the other side of the river, and on your map there's something that says Lawyer's Road. Lawyer Road.
That's my backyard.
It's your backyard.
Yes,
All right. So there's a little controversy. They said that Fremont sent his artillery up on Lawyer Road. We now believe, based on talking to a landowner and his showing us the property and what have you, it was down on the other side of the road, maybe a little lower, and still very close. I mean, the view of this battlefield from up there is extraordinary. What Fremont did, he did finally get himself moving. He comes in and marches out Lawyer Road, puts some artillery out along either that Lawyer Road or a little lower, and I don't know, 11 o'clock, noon, if the fighting's over, there are men out here collecting wounded, whatever. He lobbed shells across the river at the guys collecting wounded. It was almost like, well, I got here, I might as well shoot something, say I was here, we fired and ran off the Confederates. No, they were out here picking up wounded.
If he had gotten here early, it would have been pretty decisive for the North, you think?
Let's say Milroy was in command, just for grins. I mean, who knows? He would have certainly attempted a crossing. Now, whether he'd been successful or not.
I mean, Fremont's artillery, if it had been set up and firing early on, would it have been decisive?
Yes, because they had the same view of the Confederate flank that these guys had of their front.
Yeah.
So you would have had fire coming from front and Confederate left.
So no wonder Jackson was a little worried about him.
Yeah, and that's the reason, obviously, he burned the bridge. Now, I don't know if they got all the wagons out of the water fast enough that he couldn't have used that, but again, had Fremont been more aggressive, that'd been a slow build behind, one and two at a time coming across that bridge. So I don't think he would have done it. Well, he didn't, obviously.
There's another, after the battle, Jackson actually chases the Tyler's troops in that direction, picks up many troops, and captures them. After the battle, Jackson doesn't go into town back in town again. He actually goes up this road with his captured and win most of his infantry. And he takes this road up and it works around over to Brown's Gap. And so he went up that way, and his men actually slept on the side of the mountain, not knowing what was going to happen. And there are stories about his men trying to get a good night's sleep and rolling over and down, down, and down. But anyways, this is where the battle takes place. That's his escape route. A week later, he ends up going down with, to talk with Robert E. Lee, and they decide on a strategy to push McClellan off the peninsula. And so Jackson will come down with his corps and try to be a part of that, but Jackson's performance is very poor, probably because he's worn out, from having fought up here. I mean, they march over 600 miles in the course of a month and a half. They fight 6 major battles. This is his most costly, is the one that's right here. They tie up a little bit over 45,000 Union troops, though, in the course of that time period. All of those troops could have been used down in the peninsula. Instead, they're up here wondering what the heck Jackson's going to do next. You know what I mean? So, Jackson's Valley campaign, I've had some people that have toured with me that have actually gone to West Point, and they say that they still study Jackson's Valley campaign because of how unique it was and how successful it was and how well it tied up the rest of the Union Army. But anyways, that's my synopsis of, you know, what happened.
Now, just to follow up on that, we know the night before this battle, he was basically awake all night. He was receiving reports, he was positioning troops, he did doze off, and of course he got awakened by Trimble. They guess he might have had a half hour sleep before this battle. So imagine that going on and the stress. He never told anybody, he never shared his plans. So that stress of formulating, keeping his head, being the responsible person. I mean, he's not sharing it. He can't share, he did not share that burden. He carried it inside his head and on his shoulders for over a month in this campaign. So there's no wonder when he gets through these 7 days over Richmond that his performance was at what would be considered subpar.
Just to piggyback on that real quick on the fatigue, the closest thing that I think we have today in the military is probably the U.S. Army Ranger School. And that's 58 days with an average of 18 hours a day of training, 1 meal a day. And when they graduate from that, they have to take 2 weeks of vacation and they have to rest. So for these guys to be sent down to Richmond, yeah.
And we don't really talk about this. Again, we have mentioned 600 miles, fighting all these battles and everything else. Jackson did experience, his forces did experience a significant amount of straggling. When Ewell came and joined his army, because all of that was not done with Ewell. Ewell's actually on the other side of the mountains, serving out there. He entices Ewell to come across and help him, and by the time they asked, at that time, Johnston over in Richmond whether they could do it, it was taken care of. He was part of Jackson's army. Jackson was junior to Ewell. Ewell was the main, had a higher rank and earlier point of appointment. But Ewell agreed to serve under Jackson. And initially he thought he was nuts. And after these 2 battles, he realized, you know, this guy knew what he was doing.
Maybe not so much here, but I think a lot of that is fatigue too.
Yeah.
You know, the feeding of men piecemeal, it's something he would never do again. And I think he learned from this battle something that he probably knew, but maybe exhaustion was a big part of it. And remember, like you said too, when they had those 3 small armies join up, when they got to Front Royal, they had 17,000 men. The first battle at Kernstown, and Steve would attest to that, Jackson had 3,500 men, maybe a little more than that. But by the time he gets here, after marching them to death to get here, they say his army had dwindled from 17,000 to maybe 12,500. So a lot of those men were strung out between here and God knows where, Winchester. And after the first battle of Winchester, they'd gone all the way to Harper's Ferry, then come all the way back down here and fought 2 battles, 2 consecutive days. And it turns out that Dick Ewell is a pivotal part of this battle. He launches an attack on the flank of the Union troops just down the road here. Probably helps swing the battle.
You know, remember Ewell's across Keys. Jackson was here yesterday during the battle across Keys. So Ewell's coming, he's last in line to this battle. So when he got here, the point of concern was the left flank of the Confederate line, and Ewell plugs that gap, pushes it back.
So everything comes together. but it takes them a while. Any other questions we can
You
have?
were talking about Brown's Gap.
Yes,
That used to be a major road.
and it's not anymore, right?
Well, it's a fire road, because I had a horse, and we rode up to the top and back down.
Is it on the Blue Ridge
Yes.
Yeah.
Parkway side or the Skyline Drive?
Well, it goes up to the Skyline Drive. There's a fire road, maybe a mile and a half, something like that.
Up to Skyline Drive.
Yeah, and then you get switchbacks, and it really gets too steep to ride. So we went there. Yeah, this is Orbank. This road here is Orbank. You just follow that around, and they'll have a sign there that says Brown's Gap, and there's a place you can park and whatever.
From the parking lot to Skyline Drive is 5.2 miles.
Yeah. So you can
And there's
do it
a,
right.
there's a sign on
Yeah,
the Skyline Drive.
this is Orbank. It just kind of skirts the edge of the mountain. But you can go over there, and we saw hikers and people going up there all the time. But it's a fire road for 2 miles, and then after that it is a trail, but it's not much more
It's
than
still a
hard
fire road
scrabble.
all the way to the top.
Yeah, we've
So
gone.
it's
We
nice
went
and
all the way
wide
to
and
the top.
You can make this all the way to the top of the mountain.
Yep.
Yeah,
Yep.
yeah.
Go right to Skyline Drive.
But that was a major thoroughfare.
And I've never seen it because it's off the road, but if you go up in here a ways, someplace up there is the kiln that they use for, making iron ore. I don't know, have you ever seen that? It's in the woods someplace, I've never seen it.
I gotta go to
Lewis.
6.
Mr. Lewis owned it, and like he said, he would have...
Is there a map or something that shows where it is?
Hotchkiss had made a map of the valley for Jackson, and you can go online and find it, and yes, you can tell which side of the road it is, but wherever the heck it is, I have no idea how to get there.
I've driven up there. You gotta go in the fall or winter to even have a chance to see it.
Yeah, you can see it better in the wintertime.
We're gonna go down to the bridge
Okay.
and explore that. Thank you all for coming. You're welcome to come along. I have no idea what's across the bridge once we get there. We're going to explore it. Otherwise, thank you all. We appreciate you being a part of this.
Okay, thank you.
And you might be